I'm going to talk a little bit right now about my experience with a particular tribe of Native American Indians that I spent some time with. These people are located in southeastern Montana, and they are called the Northern Cheyenne people. I'm currently studying for my doctoral degree with the Union Institute in Ohio, and as part of my studies I spent some time with the Northern Cheyenne people in Montana this past summer from the week of June 30th to July 4th. As part of my studies, we're required to attend 3 different sessions, 5-day seminars, and there's a listing that's provided of seminars throughout the United States, and this particular one caught my eye, and I thought it sounded intriguing. So I flew out to Montana, and on arrival there, I was amazed at how large the nation is. The Northern Cheyenne people have 144,000 acres in the southeastern area of Montana State. During my 5-day stay in Montana, I came to discover that there are many similarities between my culture and the culture of the Northern Cheyenne people. One such instance was during a panel discussion in which 4 Native American people shared their experiences growing up. One panelist in particular talked about her experience in the educational system. Within the boundaries of the reservation, there are 3 schools for the Indian children. And this one particular panelist was talking about her school, that all the students there are Indians, and the teachers are primarily white Americans, which I was immediately reminded of my experience going to a deaf residential school in which most of the teachers are hearing, and there are very few deaf teachers. So that was the first similarity that I noticed between our 2 cultures. Another experience that the panelists spoke of, I saw a lot of similarity was that the men in particular noted that when they first went into the school as young boys, their hair was long and was braided in the traditional manner of their people, but when they went to school, they were forced to have their hair cut in the way of American boys. And one gentleman said that he was reminded of prisons where men have to have their heads shaved when they go into the prisons. And that reminded me of the experience of deaf children, of being physically stopped from signing, having their hands slapped, and not being permitted to express themselves in their cultural way that they would typically do. And there's the gentleman on the panel talked about what a loss of identity it was for him to have his hair cut, and I could relate to that. In addition to our similar educational experiences in the past, I also see parallels in the way both of our educational systems are currently evolving. One woman on the panel who works at the schools there talked about how in the past, in addition to the teachers being Caucasian and American, they also taught predominantly about European American history and did not recognize the Indian experience in this country, which also in my experience we were not taught about deaf history. But now there is an evolution towards bilingual, bicultural approach in the Indian schools, which is also happening in the deaf schools, and they are now emphasizing the use of their first language, which unfortunately I don't remember the name of it, but they teach their first language in school and teach about their home culture, and then from that foundation work on second language acquisition and the broader culture that they live in, which is also the emphasis that is starting to come about in deaf education at the residential schools. During my visit with the Northern Cheyenne people, I was fortunate to meet one deaf gentleman who is also a Native American, and he shared with me his experience identifying as a Northern Cheyenne and also identifying as a deaf person. And he did attend the Montana School for the Deaf, but has had to straddle those two cultures and get his cultural needs met the best he could. And on the reservation, there are only 3 or 4 other deaf Indians. So what Alvin, his name is Alvin Birdhat, what he has done is he lives on the reservation, and then he commutes into town every so often to meet friends in the deaf community and spend some time with them. So in that way, he's able to keep his cultural roots as an Indian and also be able to meet with other deaf people. When Alvin was sharing his experience with me, I was immediately reminded of another friend of mine who is also a deaf Native American, although from a different tribe, and he has chosen to do the same thing. He lives on the land of his nation, and then he commutes to spend time with other deaf people who are not Indians. So that was interesting. Another experience that that I enjoyed very much was attending a powwow during my stay there. And at the powwow, it's a celebration where people from the tribe from all ages, children to the elders, gather together, and it's a time of celebration when they wear their ceremonial regalia and dance and share their culture. At the powwow, I picked up on another cultural parallel between deaf culture and this particular Native American culture, and that is that when the MC was introducing another Indian, a guest who was visiting, they introduced the guest by their full name, first and last, and also always noted where this person was from and a little bit about them. So that's something that we do in deaf culture too. When we're introducing somebody, we tend to give someone's full name and their residence and maybe a little bit of background information. So, and in addition to the small similarities between our cultures, I also recognize that as deaf Americans have very fiercely held on to and preserved and passed on our culture to the children, likewise with the Northern Cheyenne people, they have fiercely guarded their own culture and proudly passed it along to each generation. It was a wonderful experience and really made a significant impact on me.